All right.
We're
So,
live.
yeah, boy, we were having quite the topic there before going live. We were even pondering, should we stick to that? But my goodness.
Okay, let's go ahead and stick with it for a minute. Quick.
Okay.
Enamel, color sand before the second coat or not? Let's take a poll out here with the chat. Color sand before you apply your second coat or not? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I won't inject my and you didn't inject your specific situation
Nope.
either. Because that's such a broad question in a way that
Yeah.
it'll put people
And
uh,
and 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 we're talking about a woodworking project. We're not talking about painting a car. But if you're painting with an oil-based enamel, do you sand between your first coat and your second coat? And I'm not seeing any replies. Let me
well, let them maybe they're just sitting there. Not let's not even judge that.
Yeah, okay.
See, that's why we
See.
weren't thinking of bringing this onto the. But here's the thing about that.
Mhm.
If the code, see, go with your specific what you were saying because you were
Okay.
actually explaining a situation.
Okay. What I do is I'm painting a shelf. I'm making a shelf for my wife, and it's to hold a long bar that's going to hold skeins of yarn. And I painted I primed the shelves. By the way, it's Baltic birch plywood, edge
Mhm.
banded, nice, smooth, pretty. Primed it with the enamel primer, and then painted it satin white. Got the first coat on. It's okay. Then color sanded, and now I just shot my second coat of white today. And what brought this up was I've forgotten how much I absolutely hate working with enamel. I much prefer lacquer. And it mainly has to do with drying times and recoat windows and when you do color sand to apply the second coat. And we're talking about getting rid of orange peel for a nice smooth surface. Color sand to get rid of that orange peel and any fish eyes. And of course, anybody who's ever sprayed enamel knows that the minute you start shaking a can, you're calling every insect in the planet to come land on it. You know, so you got to sand all the bugs out and all the other kind of crap. And then you float on your final top coat. And I was just saying to Eloy before we went live here, I remembered how much I hate working with enamel and that I should have gone with a lacquer like I thought.
Well, we might as well say mention what people say. So, for instance, Steve Nealon from Harneal Media says, "I sand between all coats," and then Jim Dockrell says, "I don't paint wood. That's sacrilegious." Um, so those are two one side of the coin to the other views. Now,
And
here's the well. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I can see both sides of it, but I don't believe in the sacrilegious part about painting wood. It depends on the wood.
You
You
know
know,
what I love? I love a beautiful milk paint coat on Purple Heart. It just makes everything pop.
yeah. One of the few times in a YouTube video I have ever just actually stopped the video so I could sit for 5 minutes and just crack up laughing was Matt Cremona a few years back when he was building his secretary. This guy had spent about 6 months working on a secretary, and he had Nick Ferry over. They were doing a couple of collaboration videos, and they did a collaboration video and they did their little, share, like, and subscribe thing. And then they cut away to Matt Cremona coming out into the shop going, "What the hell are you doing?" And Nick Ferry with a can of purple paint painting the side of the secretary going, "What? Steve Ramsey does it." I had to stop and laugh my tail off because I mean the 15 kinds of hell he went through to get that secretary looking like it did. And there's Ferry out there painting it purple. It was hilarious. I don't paint good woods, but I'm talking Baltic birch here. I mean, this is nothing that's special. So yeah, I'll prime it and paint it real fast.
Well, so I'll just give my side of the situation. or what my thoughts were when Mark was talking about that in the green room earlier on. He says to me that, yeah, man, I don't really like working with the enamel because of all these conditions and whatnot. And so I have no problem working with enamel and have worked with it a lot, in cans and in spray, but I live in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mentioned to Mark, well, Mark, the thing is, what kind of sheen do you want on it? And he says, well, I just want to go for a, what was it?
Satin. It's a satin finish.
So I want a satin finish on it. And to me, the sanding after, because he says he used a primer and he worked that. And if it's plywood, it's pretty freaking flat as we start off, and then that first coat of sealer is basically filling in those micro gaps, and you can sand it and hit it again. But at that point, I personally would not, unless there's a problem, which Mark did have a problem, I would not sand again for satin. I would not do it because the coats are light. You let it dry. Unless some sort of issue surfaces that oh crap, here's a freaking wasp dug into the center of, or here's some orange peel, then but other than that, I wouldn't for satin. And it's not like a car, like you were saying.
No, I'm not looking for it's not looking for a showroom finish, custom paint finish. I don't want it to glow from a mile away, but I do want it smooth. And orange peel and fish eyes are problems. I mean, and this is just Rust-Oleum spray. I want it to be quick and done and over with.
Yeah, but that's a good spray. The problem is not the spray. The problem is your atmosphere.
Well, it was, like I said, it was a dry day. It was only 24% humidity here today, and that's dry for this area.
Yeah, but the wood, see, that's what I don't. So I've had orange peel occur before out of a spray,
I sand it smooth
out of a spray gun, right. But it's like I think it. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the wood is wetter than the atmosphere, and so it bunches up and it creates the orange peel and this and that. But I think it's an awesome topic because there's always someone that's going to give their doctor prescription.
What I normally do is what I should have done this time. I should have gone with my standard Zinsser shellac-based primer, the bin primer, and then hit it with white lacquer, and then gone with a satin lacquer clear coat over the top of that. But I decided, no, you know what? This is just going up on the wall. It doesn't have to be a whole heck of a lot of work. Completely and totally forgetting that for something with my name on it, enamel is going to be more work than lacquer ever was. Because I can spray lacquer and sand it the next day. I can't do that with enamel. I have to give it a couple of days to let that cure at least partially. And these sat for well over a week, probably closer to 2, because we had a rainy spell. But they were in the house, in a climate controlled environment. And it's just, you can't use a power sander. You have to sand by hand. So I'm out there with a sanding block, 6, 7, 8 swipes, and then blow off the sandpaper and brush it off and everything. Because if you heat up that sanding dust on enamel, it melts. Then you've got a real mess. So I was just reiterating my hatred for using enamel in woodworking projects.
Man, now that you
much prefer lacquer.
Well, I'll tell you something about lacquer and myself, but and I like the results. I hate the smell of it. It is, to me, the most toxic smelling, disgusting thing ever. I prefer anything other than lacquer. Is just like, it's like a bomb that you're setting off.
Exactly. You have to wear a respirator if you're spraying any kind of lacquer, because the solvents will kill you. And I mean dead now.
Yeah, it's too extreme.
But it's no big deal for me. I would much rather wear a respirator for a few minutes of spraying and then not have to deal with waiting a week before I can sand between coats. If I'm clear coating, I go back and forth. Sometimes I'll use a shellac sanding sealer. Other times I'll just use a urethane. Other times I'll use a vinyl sanding sealer and a catalyzed varnish. It just depends on what I want to do. It just depends on the project. I'll hand rub with oil. I love True Oil gunstock finish. I love that stuff. But it's got to be a small project, and it's got to be a special project because it's a lot of work. But I don't normally get into a lot of hand rubbed oils and things like that. I'm a spray guy. I don't do a lot of shellac finishes because they're too fragile to me. I mean, you can't. I don't baby stuff. If it's going to hang on the wall, I might and never be touched, I might use shellac. But if it's going to be used like a table, it's going to have a durable finish, and I'm probably going to go with polyurethane, just simply because it's made to be beat around. Whereas a lacquer, not really that much, and a shellac, not at all. I mean, you just set a hot cup of coffee on a shellac tabletop, you know it immediately.
I did a dresser, and I just posted just the picture of the drawers, the drawer faces. That's when I did handyman work, and I did the whole piece. But I used spray paint, and then to do the color. And then I added, instead of the lacquer, which I like lacquer. Again, I love the finish of lacquer, but it kills me. And no matter what, it's like I can't even. But so instead of that, I love polyurethane. Mm-hmm. And so I coated it with polyurethane from a spray gun, pneumatic with a compressor. Mm-hmm. And that was the finish that I ended up with. But the lacquer to me is toxicity to the highest degree. But the results are beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, by far.
And again, to me, it's worth a few minutes of wearing a respirator when I spray it, because, then I walk away from it and go to another area and take the respirator off, chill for a little while. Then I can come back in a few hours and sand. I mean, I can do 2 coats in a day. With enamel, I can't do that. So.
It's funny, as you were saying this, I started looking through because, we always hang out in the hangout and stuff. And everybody's like woodworking or CNC specific projects, or, scroll saw specific projects, or any derivative thereof, mm-hmm. and stuff. And I haven't been doing projects and so I said, oh, let me look through and I found that because it's relevant to what we're doing. And I said, oh yeah, I used to do stuff like that, It's like,
yep. I see over in the chat, we got people talking about Imron. I have very limited experience with Imron. And the only project I think I ever worked with Imron was back at the cabinet shop. We had a customer requested a white Imron kitchen, and we had a new to us painter who didn't realize that you needed to box the paint before you started spraying. So we had 4 gallons of Imron paint that he would just mix up, take some out of a can, mix it up, and start spraying. And we had cabinets that were probably about 4 different colors of white. And he didn't last with us very long, because Imron paint is basically spray on plastic. And you spray it once and you're done. You're finished with it. You cannot respray it. You can't sand it and put a second coat on it. You spray it one time and you're finished. And because if you try to respray it, the wet paint just beads up and runs right off. It just physically will not stick, no matter how much sanding you do. So we ended up stripping about half of that kitchen and redoing it, because he didn't blend all the paints together in one big container and then dip from that. He dipped from this can, then that can, then the other can. And it was a mess.
I had a leather couch years ago, when my living room wasn't a workstation. I have a couch there now. It's just hidden behind a table with stuff stacked up. But I had a couch, and it had, you know how leather will sort of like crease and then create little cracks.
Sure.
And I was like, man, this is kind of ghetto, and I don't like, but it's a couch, and who's just gonna throw out a couch for no reason? I mean, because couches are expensive. And I was looking through my my tool shed, came across the many different spray bottles my dad had, probably from like 1985 or something. I found a sofa spray repair spray thing with the actual color that the couch, like that leathery color.
Yeah.
And I looked at it in the can, it was like almost full. So my dad probably like used it for whatever project and then just sat it back up and stuff. And I looked at it, I was like, holy smokes. And it doesn't say the date on it, but it looked old, man.
Yeah.
This is for repairing your pleather or leather or this or that, discoloration, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
It's easy to use. And like, it looks like freaking like, back in the day. And I said, screw it, man. And I'm shaking stuff. And I went, psh, and sure enough, it covered the thing, and it was a little bit darker. And as it dried, it started blending in, and it kind of, started working. And I kept doing it, and there was a lot of them and stuff. And then the bottle ran out. I was surprised that from 1980 whatever, who knows from when, right? It could be the 1990s. Sure as hell don't think it was from the 2000s. That thing still did its trick. It still had the aerosol in it. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, you never can tell what's going to work and what isn't, because I've bought brand new cans that didn't work and have to replace them. Take it back, return it.
I'm pro spray paints so much. And in fact, I see, right. It's just, however, there are situations where you end up with the orange peel situation, or like you said before earlier, when you put it you can't put it sideways, because you'll just end up with those trails. And like you said, it'll skin over the top, because that's what hardens up first. But underneath, you have this ocean of wonderful dripping paint that can make, So now Patrick's is here, so I'll just go ahead and so is Jared as well. So I'll just mention Patrick. I did a mallet or hammer inspired by Harju, and actually for a I guess it was a contest for what's this dude's name? Patrick's will remember the guy's name. King. James King.
Yes, King's Fine Woodworking. Yeah.
And so I made this very sort of medieval Thor-like hammer with a point on one end, and I said, man, let's spray it pink, and then or I don't know what it was, but I sprayed it. It turned out pink. It looked like a clown hammer. The colors.
Mm-hmm.
And then Patrick said, oh no, I know what I did. I had bought these dyes, water soluble dyes, and I said, let me give it like this purple heart look, because James King is all about purple heart and this and that. And so I said, yeah. But we were using pine is what I was using. So I did and it came out really freaking cool. And I colored it, and it turns out like a clown thing. The color, the way it seeped in and stuff, it was just like a pink. I'm like, crap. And I showed it to Patrick, and he says, dude, just coat it and then rub out hit it with some color, some black or some whatever. And I said, you know what, dude, let's do that. And I hit it. After it was, the water soluble dye sucked up in it, I hit it with the spray paint, and it created a coating where it muted the color underneath it.
Right.
And what ends up happening is that it's an effect. It's a beautiful effect. And then I rubbed that off, sanded it a little bit, and created, basically it ended up like a more a pretty badass. If it were purple heart, it'd be a freaking fantastic purple heart because it's got like this perfect sort of like almost like comic book Thor, comic books, paints, beautiful, and it muted it. So there's techniques that you can use to,
Yep.
if something, if you're playing around, that you could actually use to get to where you want to get to. But it's interesting that the people that are always like, I want this specific color when it's a combination of dyes and this and that.
Mhm.
I don't know that it's reasonable for one to get to that color because it's always hit or miss depending on.
You can get pretty close.
You get pretty close, but it's always a factor. Yes, I agree. And sometimes it ends up that it's like bam, dead on. But it's a factor of conditions around you, the products that you're using and the quantities of products and the order in which you're applying and it has to do with so many factors that it's easy to screw up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, sure it is. But there are certain people that I know, like one of the painters at the furniture shop was an absolute wizard. This guy could match any color and it would be spot on. He had an eye for color that I swear he had more rods and cones than any other human being walking the earth. Because I mean, you could hold up two pieces of brown and he'd say, no, that one's got more yellow in it. Can't you see? And I'm like, hell no, it looks brown to me, but I'm not that way. But that technique that you were just describing is actually a glaze technique.
Yeah.
And that we used to use at a mill workshop that I worked at down in Nevada, making big, huge displays in casinos and what have you. You stain the wood and throw a sanding sealer over it. And then we come back with a glaze and rub that glaze on with rags. And then it would get sent back into the booth. They'd spray it with another coat of vinyl sanding sealer, and then we'd sand it and everything, and then they'd top coat it. But yeah, you pay a little bit extra for a glaze technique. But yeah, you can mix stains, you can mix colors. I like, a lot of people do not like that Minwax poly shades, the stain and polyurethane in one.
Yeah.
I love the spray can version of that stuff. I don't like the plain, dip your brush in it. I don't like that at all. But the spray version I love because I use it as a toner spray when I'm going to be finishing with polyurethane.
Interesting.
And
I've used it I don't want to say a lot, but I've used it like 5-6 times because
yeah.
I did a lot of a fair amount of refinishing furniture as well as building furniture and trying to coat it with. And I wasn't too fond of it because of the inaccuracy. So what it is that the poly shades is polyurethane, oil, suspended, and inside of it, or in between it and within it, suspended with your stain.
Well, it's just a tinted polyurethane is all it is. But yeah.
And well, it's polyurethane, and then you have this. Well, stay with me on just this bit where I'm going. That you have this color, this dye, this stain suspended amongst that, because what it is that the stain dries underneath the poly. The poly creates the coat that's the hard coat on top.
Right.
But when you attempt to, let's say, use that product brushed, no matter what brush, because there's a whole factory list of people and channels out there, experts obviously, but that will say you must use the horsehair bristle brush, this and that. And although that is an awesome brush, the horsehair bristle brush to use on paints and whatnot and this and that and for your polys because of the fineness of it and not leaving streaks and this and that. The truth of the matter is that these products that are basically, well, not even basically, they function like a tacky application that you're using, and it's kind of tacky. It actually, because of, I guess, gravity, it will find level in a beautiful, perfect paradise world, and it will, start to, unless the atmosphere is so hot, it'll create those little dents and stuff and uneven, but it generally will. So to me, the brush situation is not a big this and that, unless you drop hairs in the, but the fact that when you apply that poly shade and it dries, you will see where you have variations of thickness of poly, and you'll have stain, and it'll be mismatched. And some places there's clumping of color and others not. It sucks. But final thing I'll say about this, but if you take it into a spray gun connected to a compressor, then you're creating a beautiful, it's an all-in-one situation. But I will just say, you don't have the full control of your color even with that, because it's not, I'm not too fond of it, but I have used it, and I would use it again depending on the situation if it's not critical with color.
Yeah, it's a good toner for me if you're trying to get within a certain range. Like when my sister-in-law moved from Florida to Oregon, one of the legs on her sofa got damaged, and I could not find a replacement for it. So I had to make do. I had to do the best I could. And the only I didn't have the right materials. I don't have a lathe. I can't turn. So I had to go down and buy store-bought legs. But they were made out of white ash. And I don't know what this sofa was made out of, but it was not white ash. And I'm talking about white ash, glow in the dark, keep you awake knowing it's in the house, bright white ash.
Right. Beautifully perfect, depigmented white ash.
Exactly. And I had to had to stain it with dark walnut stain, which gave me my base color, and then come back with a antique cherry polyshades toner spray, and I got it almost perfect. So I'm a big fan of it as far as toners, but we're talking about a couple of short sofa legs. We're not talking about like a dresser or a dining table or something like that. And the other thing I would say about the polyshades is you have to top coat it, because if you get a chip, you go right straight through back to that base material. It's not like, right. So it's polyshades cures minimum of 3 coats of top coat over the top of it.
There's a product that I really enjoyed, and it's a funny thing because it was going out of I guess in, what do they call it when it goes out of use? Discontinued.
Obsolete. Yeah. Discontinued.
But Home Depot had a frickin' rack full of these things for like dirt cheap, like pennies on the dollar cheap. And what they were, and they probably brought them back. I don't know. You guys could probably say what they were these tubes, like toothpaste tubes with your stain in it, but it's like a dry rub stain that dries quickly. And inside of it has all the colors you could want, right? Like the whole gambit, like the whole. And so I went and grabbed all of them, man, because it was so freaking awesome. You take it, you squirt a dab, you rub it on the wood. Now, mind you, this is not for precision, because once you start doing that, you're dry rubbing on wood, the stain needs to suck into the wood. So you could do minimal prepping on it, but you can't seal the wood. Mm-hmm. So you don't know how it's going to act as far as blotchiness and this and that. But besides all that, the fact that you can squeeze out a little dab of this stuff dry, and it's like you touch it and you rub it, and then it stains the thing. Boy, that was awesome. Like pennies on the dollar. I think I have like 1 tube in there. It was from Minwax, the product, and I think they discontinued it. I'm not sure, but it was cool.
I'm gonna have to check into that because that sounds intriguing. You say it's discontinued. I don't know. I've not heard of it. I'm gonna have to check it out.
And I bought it cheap, dude. I wouldn't have bought it if it weren't so dang cheap at that time. The rack, it was just sitting there, and when I saw it at Home Depot, like my mind, I was like looking at other people to see that they didn't see it, and nobody cared. Like the whole stain section, people were walking right by it, going towards the gloves and frickin' like little, whatever. Other things, but I was at the stain aisle and I saw this, and I had to get them, dude. So I started grabbing them. They're going to steal this from me. I got to get them. Yeah, so I used that for a while on certain projects, and it was great.
Cool. It's hilarious, man. You were talking about earlier about we had absolutely nothing to talk about, and we just did 30 minutes on a discussion we were having back in the green room.
That's hilarious, dude.
and haven't touched either of the topics we were going to talk about.
Well,
it's just hilarious.
I'll just say this. I want to throw this that doesn't fit with anything, but it doesn't matter because it's Trampled.
What the heck?
I discovered it, and I'll share it with you, and then we can talk about that question that you had, because I think it kind of works within the world of what we're talking about here. So I'll just interject this one little piece. Doing my ancestry research, and talking about medieval times, I discovered the earliest known possible up till now mention of my surname going back in time, and it occurred in a city in the south of Spain, where there's two people mentioned. They're in a town that overturned. This is like in 12,050 something. Okay,
1,250 something.
I'm sorry, 1,250 something. I found the document on the official Spain website of the government of Spain, and each, everybody had their own register halls and this and that. And I found it's like pages and pages long, and two guys are mentioned. Well, get this. The whole town in 12 whatever, I'd have to check the specific, revolted against the authorities of that town for whatever reason. It's in Spanish, so I have to break it down little by little with the translator, and I'm working on it, and I'm going down the line, and so I'm just recalling. So what happened is the town rebelled against the authorities, and they sent in troops, and they quenched the uprising. But then the king of that time sent a judge to the town, and in the middle of the town there's a castle that stands there to this day. We're talking just early or mid-medieval, something like that, era. And the judge passed sentence on dozens and dozens. I mean, the list keeps going, dude. You read the list of the people all sentenced, and you're reading all these names, and that's how I found mine. Oh, boom. Oh, crap. There. Now I can't connect that guy to his son, to his son, to his son, to his. That's not the point. The point is that this dude with that I'm searching this, and I found that there's two of them, a Martin de Escagedo and another one, and their last names was Escagedo Santa. So that was interesting. Anyways, but here's the part that I wanted to share with you about that, because I had never, in the context of you like reading about a Lindsay, let's say, and you're doing your research and you come across the Lindsay in England, and then all of a sudden that Lindsay is facing, which actually you do have in your story, is facing some sort of like jail time or something other. Well, you would be curious and you say, holy crap, in the context of me, that's kind of freaky. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a descendant of possibly this. Well, anyways, in the case of these guys, the judge sentenced them to be tied. I'm reading this shit, this stuff, to be. That's how shocking it is that I just threw out a curse word. To be tied by the hands and legs, and I'm talking about like dozens and dozens and dozens of people, maybe close to 100, and be dragged through the city squares, and then reaching the point of the noose of the hangman, being hung till dead, it says, all in Spanish, till dead. And once that, and he's reading out, they were reading this out to the people, once that, the head shall be severed from the shoulders, is the way they wrote it, and then the head shall be taken to some stakes and placed on the top of stakes surrounding all the main entrances of the city, and let not one person bring down the heads thereof, because they themselves will be condemned to death, so that the city may see, the punishment of their actions, and so on, so on, and so on. Freaking crazy, dude. I was sitting, this was the other night, I was sitting there, when you start getting that little tummy ache when you
Yeah, because this is not something that you read about in a book.
Yeah.
This is the real deal.
Yeah, like they
I
actually
mean,
handed sentences down.
Yeah.
That already, I mean, look,
They'd
what-
come after you with a hot poker if they liked you. You didn't want to know if they didn't like you.
well, I mean, think about it. You're being drugged by the streets, and you're probably thinking as you're bumping up and down the cart, down this road, you're probably, man, I probably shouldn't have done what I did. You know, you're probably thinking that. And by the time you end up at the hangman's thing, you're like, I can't believe this is, well, fine. You know, but then you're thinking that after all is said and done, your head's going to be sitting on a stake. Crazy.
So it's not like this was a surprise. They knew this going in the minute, that's what's going to happen to us. Well, yeah.
Dude, and women as well. I don't know about, but it was female names, male name. They were back. They were.
Yeah. They just didn't care back then. They didn't care. That was really quality.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
So this was in the kingdom of Murcia, and just on the tip of Valencia, the kingdom of Aragon. And that would happen in I think it was 1250 something, 1240 something, thereabouts. But yeah, that's
so. So let me ask you: was this under the Moors, or had the Christians?
See, I don't know. See,
retaken control.
See, I don't. So here's the thing: I don't know because I was reading through the thing, but there were there were Christians. The Moors let the Christians practice their Christendom.
Right.
They just wanted to occupy and conquer, but you had your Christians in Moorish controlled Spain, and you had your Jews and you had your Arabs and all that, but you had your Christians that would, and you also had Christians that by default would actually convert, or not convert, but because of the passage of time, they learned the language of the Moors or the Arabs, let's say. And the culture became there's a word for it, but it's Spanish Moor, basically, where they lived culturally as Moors, but they were Christian in practice. And so it was a new culture that had formed, because obviously it's a new culture that forms.
Right.
I don't know. Actually, yeah, by that time they had no, that's not true. They were in the thick of the Moorish back and forth, because you had fighting always, so it was always in flux.
Well, from 1232, I'm just looking it up right now, from 1232 to 1287, they were under Moorish control.
Yeah.
So it didn't end until 1490.
Well, it ended with Isabel, the Catholic queen, and Ferdinand.
Right. In 1490 is when it ended.
Right. And right after that, right at that point, was the beginning of the era of the new exploration of the Americas.
Right.
But during that time, throughout the history of the Moors, throughout the whole history, there's actual physical paper documentation, vellum, and in thousands and thousands of, and they document the push and tug, because the Christians, let's say, were always fighting and taking over a place, losing a place. The last stranglehold that was held by the Moors was the what's it called? It's in the south. There's a name for it, which I can't recall right now. Whatever. It was one city that maintained it, held out, but finally fell. But throughout that whole time, the kingdom of Aragon would push forth. There was fighting. It's not like, and French people would come down and fight, and the Crusades and all that. Right. So this was during that time, but that city was under Christian occupation, with Christian names and Christian judges and so on and so forth. Not that it was not in the past controlled by Moors, but there was a constant
at the time. Okay. Yeah. I think the one that you were looking for was the Emirate of Granada.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Okay. Yeah. That ended. That officially ended in 1492 when Ferdinand and Isabella finally got rid of them. But they basically came to power in 1490. But over most of the country.
Those two were the ones that finally, after hundreds and hundreds of years of fighting the Moors, were the ones that were able to. But right after that, they actually well, during that time, right after that, they actually expelled by decree all Jews, all Arabs, everyone that wasn't Christian.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
expelled them. And soon thereafter, as time went on, started the Inquisition as well.
Right.
Because what happened was that they don't want a resurgence of
Right.
Moors coming in, and a lot of these people that were thrown out, let's say, ended up in other parts of Europe,
Mhm.
went back to Africa, or went to the Americas.
Yep.
And you have many descendants, and some of those people ended up in places like the Canary Islands.
Mhm.
As an example, I found that I have Portuguese ancestry. My grandmother is actually more Portuguese than Spanish. She never knew that. She knows that now. She's my only living, but she's more Portuguese than Spanish. And according to what I've documented, I didn't know that I was going to go in this direction, but according to what I've documented, is that the original line that my grandmother comes from were the first settlers in the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
From Portugal.
Yeah.
And even Portugal was kicking out these factions of religious
Right.
and
Right.
cultural.
That's
So
one of the few times back in that history that Spain and Portugal actually worked with one another to reconquer Iberia.
I can't confirm this, but it's looks like it. But one of my ancestors, if not more, were of Jewish descent.
Yeah.
through the Portuguese. I can't confirm it.
Yeah.
I feel that it's
Well,
or not. I see where it's going because the last name goes back,
Mhm.
and it's written about that the people that have this name on this island, and the name is Montes de Oca. Montes. That's one of. Remember when we go back in time, our grandparents fork out into from 4 to 8 to 16 to, so it goes out. So one of them, I believe, came through that line and stuff. But whatever, that's going crazy. I just wanted to touch on that like hanging situation because but yeah. So I have actual family from the Canary Islands also, that line.
Yep. It's just wow. Yeah, when you think all the way, I mean, that's 850 years back, minimum. 850 years back, close to 900 years now. Because if you said it was in the 1250s,
1250, 1240. I keep thinking in my mind, I have to go back and look at the doc, but in my mind, I remember 1258, 12 something like that.
Well, now wait a minute. You're looking at 750, almost 800 years. But you know what? When you go back that far, 100 years doesn't really mean much,
I mean, it depends on what you're talking about, but it's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. That was, I was just trying to think back. Well, how long ago was that? 1250. That'd be 750 years. Okay. Well, no, this is 2020. See, they said there'd be no math, but they lied.
I mean, I would love to be able to go down all those lines and be able to see the thing. But long story short, that's a curiosity. If I could connect through to that, that would be insane. But just the same, I see these things, and that one was a shocker. So that's why I wanted to share it with you.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I could connect. If I could go back to 1200 frickin' AD in the past and say, oh look, I can leave from this. That would be insane. And there was significant document. Now they do say that well, there's other crazy stuff, but let's not go into that. But long story short, the problem with last thing I'll say, the problem with surnames is that on my paternal side and all the branches that are Spanish, the convention is you take on your father's name and your second last name is your mother's so that people can trace you back in time. In Portuguese, I just found out, they flip it in reverse.
So it's mother's first and then father's second.
Right. And here's the thing. When people came to the Canary Islands, because the Portuguese went to the Canary Islands, the British went to. That's probably where I have a suspicion that I may have my British results of my DNA from that Canary Islands. But the British were there, the Portuguese were there, and the Spanish ended up with it. But here's the thing. Once the Portuguese and Spanish people there mixed together, some families used the tradition of Spain, father first, mother next, and some said, no, let's use the Portuguese name. So basically, you'll find descendants with names switched and broken into. So it's an impossibility.
It's
just
a mess. It's a
Mhm.
huge mess unless you find both names in whatever combination.
Exactly. So
Man,
that's what I'm facing on one of the branches of the thing. So yeah, so that's that. Yeah.
completely and entirely related to finishing woodworking.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty barbaric. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's easy for us to look back with in 2020 hindsight, but when you look at stuff like that, they were not just sending a message to those convicts, they were sending a message to the world. We take this stuff seriously. And it was done basically to drive a certain faction of the population out of the area and keep them out, and letting them know we're not gonna
No. But these were Christian.
tolerate this.
No, but these were. Are you talking about the faction? These were actual Christian residents of the place that just didn't want. They just didn't want this guy in power, or whoever in power.
Right.
Right. Started blinking.
Yeah, I saw that. Right. But this was during a time of the Moorish control. So you say they rebelled against the leaders. They were Christians rebelling against the Moors.
No. Spain was pushing down and in different pockets, because you had the Portuguese that were trying to fight off the Arabs, the Moors.
Right.
You had the Spanish, but you also had a problem where you didn't have one, because the Spanish wasn't one group of people. The Spanish, what they were different kingdoms, kind of like England, or actually exactly like England, where you had different factions. And these people had their kingdoms and they would fight. And so one group would conquer an area, but you'd have a Moorish town 100 miles this way or this and that. And you had people in that Moorish town, right, that were Christians under Moorish rule.
Right.
Now, this place specifically, I think this place is called, it's close to, or it's next to the town of Yecla, but it's in the area of Murcia in Spain. Well, during this time, that town and that castle, fort, that place was in occupation by the Spanish. But in the past, it had been fought back and forth with the Moors.
Okay, so
all of Spain was under war. I mean, basically, all of Spain was in war, except for parts of the north, with the Moors back and forth. But it's not like the whole time the Moors. It's not like the Moors came, and they took everything over.
No, I got it. I was just wondering if I thought that they rebelled against the Moors, but you're saying they didn't. They rebelled. They were all Christian.
Well,
they rebelled against just one guy.
Yeah, these are Christian surnames and Christian people, but
who were they rebelling against is what I was getting at.
The authorities of that town. But because, see, I'd have to sit and read through the whole thing, but what I'm saying is that the Christian people there, because the whole thing is this. Throughout that history, you had the Moors invade, and that town was probably dominated by the Moors at some time, because we're talking a history of 800 years.
Right.
So you know what I'm saying? Like within 800 years,
I do.
There's territories that are won and lost. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I get it.
So I don't know, like what specifically. I'd have to go and see. But that town was a Christian-run town in the Kingdom of Aragon, and those people were Christians, Christian names, and the leaders that they were rebelling against were Christians
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
they were rebelling against.
That's
You
what
know,
I wanted to know. Okay.
But that town was more than likely under Arab occupation for a long time,
Sure.
because you're talking about a 800 years of occupation
Right.
in Spain. However, with that said, though, since we're touching on the subject, the Arabs allowed the Spanish to practice their religion without problem. Some Spanish groups became an actual faction where they learned. Like I learned about this when I read that. I started investigating where they became culturally, writing wise, and in many ways Arabized.
Mm-hmm.
But they maintained their Christendom. But it's like if you're under like the occupation of whatever group, you kind of after a certain
When in
amount,
Rome, yes.
you become So that's kind of like the people of that town. I don't know their full history, but that those two Escagedos did appear in that town, and I don't know earlier than that. So that's the earliest known, and it was in the southern eastern side of Spain where that occurred, where in fact all the main Moorish attacks and conquering and all that occurred. So that that as much I know. So it's a very shocking stuff. Yeah.
And that's the earliest written record of that surname that's been discovered so far.
Yeah, because the other thing that I have apart from that is a mention where the two kings from the two different mention the following from the earliest Christian families that populated I guess it's the town of Caravacas, cow face it's called, and then it lists the early names, and that's also from the 1100s 1200s. I'm not sure, I'd have to go back but that's another town, and they mention Escagedo with my full name with a G. This other Escagedo are mentioned with a J, but it doesn't matter because back then certain letters
they swapped them back and forth. Yeah.
Right. So it could very well be that either or both are down the line is where I descend from on my paternal side. It's possible.
Now, that brings another interesting point here, and that, oh, Doc, I see what you did there. That brings about another interesting point, though, because your family, you have definitely traced your family back to the northern part of Spain, up in the mountain areas.
On my paternal.
On your paternal side, yes. And that just makes me wonder if maybe, I'm not saying that that's a direct result of the two Escagedos that were executed, but maybe I wonder if some of those folks didn't read the handwriting on the wall and say, we need to get out of Dodge here. Let's just load up the truck and move to Tennessee, so to speak, kind of head up north and get away from this guy, so we don't have retaliation against the family.
Yeah, it could. Look, the early. So this is what I think. So I see what you're saying. So they could have, originally all these people in Spain, and by the way, the Moors also took over Italy, Doc, and they were everywhere. But one thing I will tell you about the Moors, in case, for people listening, they brought, because of the Moors, Europe was actually, even though it sucked, but culturally, all of Europe was enlightened because of poetry, mathematics, science, astronomy, right? Astronomy, which is the one that's not hocus pocus, and probably astrology too, because
astronomy.
The astronomy, they brought that to Europe. You have to understand, and I'm talking to people that will listen to this and the south of Europe, all of it was where it all started. Yeah. It brought culture into the rest of. The Romans came in. So I'm not trying to say, the Moors, this and that. And by the way, my DNA shows that now the update 1% more. So I have a percent there. And so one of my great
well, it only stands to reason.
or a few. Well, not really, because a lot of Spanish don't even have that.
Well, true, but I mean, when you figure they went from 700 and I think 711 AD to the 1490s, you figure that's 700 years.
Well, the problem
probably
no, right. The problem is that people are going to fall in love or by force or a bunch of things, and when people start living together, I mean, you see that in New York. Yeah. You see that in California, you see that in Miami, everywhere. So it's natural that groups intermingle. But what I'm saying is that these Moors brought enlightenment during the Middle Ages. Culture. Sure. They had in Spain libraries public open, when in the rest of Europe they did not have. They had libraries for the public. They had bathing halls, or whatever you call, where you'd all gather. So they brought a certain sort of thing to the and plus language and whatnot and writing. So they were culturally advanced, and they did allow, even though the Christians did not like, obviously, the occupation, they did allow people to practice. Jews could practice Judaism, Christians could practice, but throughout that time there had to be intermingling. For me, it shows up. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But for others, it might show up more, and it just varies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It stands to reason. I mean, it's not surprising at all.
But but remember, some Spanish did not intermingle with that. So it wasn't like you had to by force. So you had people that don't share that ethnicity, let's say. But in my case, I have that shared ethnicity, even though it's going back in time a long time. Sure. But at one point, the Romans were there as well, and so on. So who knows?
Well, at one point the Romans were everywhere, so that stands to reason as well. They ate the whole Mediterranean for breakfast.
Yeah, yeah, and they also took over England.
They took parts of it, yeah.
France, Germany, and so the Romans did bring also culture. And when the fall of the Romans, when they lost their hold, then Europe fell into darkness. That's what began the Middle Ages. It was because of the loss of Roman, culture and rule, that we had the warlords that began, the Middle Ages, and then everybody fell into darkness, which is a beautiful. Well, it's a horrible story, but for somebody looking back and liking, it's an amazing story. Because it's it's D&D, Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure, until William the Conqueror came along and messed it up for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
So only on this podcast would you get a conversation that starts out about how I hate working with Enamel and end with William the Conqueror.
Yeah,
I can't think of any other podcast that would dare to even talk about that.
I don't think that there should be any rules. I think, but then again, there should be non-spoken rules of decency. But why not? Everything is connected anyhow.
One way or another.
Everything is connected, one way or the other anyhow. So I think that why not?
That was rather zen of you, actually. You believe in the interconnectedness of all things.
Well, I believe that, though. I think that everything is connected.
Okay. So the flapping of a butterfly's wings in Africa can lead to a hurricane in Florida?
You can have 6 degrees of separation and connect anything, I think.
Okay. Well, we all know that that's going to just lead to Kevin Bacon, though.
Oh, everything leads to Kevin Bacon, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's the story of the medieval thing, and we expanded on it, but there's so much, really, to be honest with you, because there's a whole history that I just discovered, but that's just the cutting into 4s and severing. That was like the main thing, but yes, the history of Spain is quite extensive. as well as the rest of Europe. But yeah, I'm interested in that stuff. I guess we'll push to the next subject because you had something interesting to share.
Well, I didn't really have anything to share. It was just a topic that I figured I would open up. But you know, we've already filled an hour, so I think changing to a third topic might, you know, kill another. Well, then again, maybe you're just not interested in the topic. I got on the, okay, here it is. I got on, I was PMing back and forth with an admin of a group that I'm in. And a couple of subjects were brought up. And later on in an admin forum that I'm in, we were discussing folks posting videos and things of this and that nature. And a lot of it, we didn't really talk about this in our discussion, but it got my brain working in the other direction. People have an innate distrust of advertisements. Yeah. If you see, and we go out of our way to avoid advertising. I mean, there are extensions you can download on your browser that'll eliminate any kind of advertising. There are, you know, I mean, and this goes back forever, back to the first VCRs, where you could actually fast forward through commercials if you had recorded a TV program. We've gotten used to just trying to avoid advertising at all costs. And in having that thought process, it led me to makers on YouTube who will accept sponsorship for a video, whether it be in exchange for a tool or just they give you money and you promote their product, like a commercial in the middle of the of your video or what have you. And people don't like that. They hate it. If you even mentioned that you are collaborating with this company, and I use air quotes around the word collaborating, they sent me this carving knife set, and here I'm going to show you how I chipped carved this lid for this jewelry box. All of a sudden, that project is just out the window. It has no validity because somebody gave you a set of carving knives. And you did promote those knives at the beginning or the end or something like that. But I'm wondering what put us into that mindset to where the work that person did is no longer somehow valid because somebody gave them the knife that they used to carve it with. How did we, I don't understand that mindset. And I wanted to get your opinion on it, see what you thought about it.
My opinion is a terrible and monstrous thing. Actually, I think that I am a person that believes that you should, let's put it this way. I don't like commercials just like as much as the next guy.
Right.
But if someone is doing a commercial, like let's say X channel on YouTube is doing a commercial for a product that he was given, I think that he has not only every right to do so, but beyond that, you know, it's not my place other than me self-thinking, well, I don't like that. But it's not my place to tell him what's invalid or not invalid because that criteria is a criteria of some derangement of how things work in the world. These are people that haven't learned a specific lesson. And the lesson is an easy one, but a hard one to learn for some. And it's like, you do you, I'll do me. If we agree on something and can barter, sell, trade, if I don't like what you do, go ahead. It's not affecting me. Like that attitude of like live and let live. Mm-hmm. These people may have stirrings of jealousy, envy, and I don't know.
I think that's a part of it. Yeah.
Also, there's a part of it that has to do with I think that's the main, because if I see a video that I don't like, mm-hmm. I don't go out of my way and say, hey man, you sucked at this, you sucked at that, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. If by chance I'm interested in the subject, I may comment, oh man, I would do this way. I've tried it this way. That's if I'm interested to share that idea that I thought with the person. But I would never dare and say, hey man, you suck, and what you're doing is wrong, and you're such a tool for the companies and the powers of the universe that you would, bring out, and use this tool that you were given. And all that attitude to me is a waste of space, and these people don't have respect, and I just, that's how I feel about it.
Well, I'm not even talking about necessarily a comment on the video or anything, but I'm just talking about the total attitude, because even advertisers, even the people who will sponsor a video, are starting to get to the point to where they're saying, just use the tool, go for a lot of product placement, but don't mention we gave it to you, because they're seeing the backlash of that. For example, if I built a white picket fence in front of my house and just built it and said, here's my project, like, share, subscribe, have a great weekend, that's fine. But if I mention anywhere in that video that I'm collaborating with Home Depot, they gave me the materials, now I'm going to build the fence, suddenly that fence, which is identical to the one that I paid for, doesn't mean as much. There's a problem with it.
In my opinion,
suck.
In my opinion, those people will suck a lemon.
And I now suck because I sold out.
You what? Explain what?
I said, well, not only does that fence suck because somebody gave me the materials, but I suck now because I sold out.
Right. Well, here's the thing. If you're in a position where you've created a group of followers, subscribers, and they have a certain attitude toward the thing, and they're showing you this disdain for an action, that's a red flag from that group of people.
Yeah.
Even though ethically that group of people are full of dog, you know what?
Yeah.
Because they weren't taught right. Because what do you care? That the guy's using
my opinion right there is, what do you care?
Exactly.
I mean, if somebody takes a piece of leather and makes a wallet, does it really matter if they bought the thread or somebody mailed it to them and said, mention us? No,
it shouldn't even see that whole thought, that all that whole, even that. Look, if I watch, okay, it's very easy. If I watch, I mean, maybe what they're saying to the channel is that we don't want you to become, because look, there's this whole thing with indie rock, and there's a whole indie rock culture.
Yeah.
And if you're indie, you're cool, and indie people know what indie is not. And if you're not indie, you're just like not with it. And so everything has to be within the indie. And these are people that are building their own little cultural hierarchies, which occur in every strata of humanity.
Sure.
We have it in the biggest form through our governments and whatnot, but in small clans, we have it with, let's say, a woodworking community, or the music, guitar effects, pedal community, but that scraping to the top, or that sort of like, that whole attitude is a human quality that I dislike. However, they have the right to feel that way, but it's not, it ain't right, because what do you care?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a lot of companies who are now, they'll be more than happy to send you a tool, but then tell you, don't mention we sent you the tool. Just do some product placement, make sure they can read the name, make sure it's highlighted, but don't tell people that we gave it to you, because that devalues the advertisement. I mean, you don't even have to be giving an opinion on it. Just say, yeah, I'm gonna build this workbench out here in my shed, and you're using a, for lack of a better example, a DeWalt screwdriver now, or impact driver. I don't know if DeWalt does this or not. I really don't know. They don't even know I exist. But just make sure that when you're using that impact driver, they can see the DeWalt name. Maybe set it in the background when you're doing your intro and outro. Make sure if you have any other DeWalt tools, they can be seen prominently up on your work shelf. Stuff like that. Because the minute you say the folks at DeWalt were nice enough to send me this drill, all of a sudden that entire workbench doesn't mean anything. You sold out. This is nothing but a commercial for DeWalt. Your project is meaningless.
And you know what I say to that? You know what I say to that? Well, I say to that, I really don't care.
I don't either.
What you think, meaning to the people that think that way, because at the end of the day, you know, what does it matter? Am I sponsoring an ethical, you know, crusades? Let's tie into that. Am I sponsoring an ethical, you're ethical? Because here's the thing, ethical, there is something called ethical.
Sure.
And then there's pseudo-ethical. And these people that are totally against that you're saying that here's a tool sponsored by the, you know, those people, they're dying on a hill that's not worth it. I'm pretty extreme when it comes to that, because I feel that if people don't like it, you'll feel the repercussions, you know, because that's just and that's how it works. But
I'm just wondering how the general public got into that mindset. I know we avoid advertising. And if your entire video is nothing but a long commercial and you can't say 3 words without the brand name of the tool or the people that send it to you, then yeah, that gets pretty tiresome real fast. I'm just wondering how we got as a society to the point to where the mere mention of anything being given to you free negates everything. I just don't understand where people get that mindset from. I think you nailed a portion of it, and a major portion of it is they sent that to him, but they didn't send me one. I'm jealous because he is receiving some of the goodies, but I'm not. Ain't nobody selling me tables. Ain't nobody sending me a table saw.
Here's the thing, man. Here's also the thing. Like, you know, I also, as the watcher, like, let's say I'm one of those people that I'm like, let's pick someone. Jim Dockrell. Can you believe that NASA sent Jim Dockrell up there in Canada, this moonwalker laser tree stump cutter dash 1596? I can't believe it. He can cut trees down faster than, like, you know, James Bond and Superman teaming up. I'm not going to watch him ever again. Like, let's say, you know, now here's the thing. I have the right. Sorry for using you as an example, but I made it so ridiculous that it wouldn't count anyhow, Jim.
Well, they also screwed up because there ain't a tree within 10 miles of Jim, but go ahead.
Well, I don't know if Jim's going to send that machine back, but by the way, I don't know if it's the size of 3. It's the size of 3 football fields, so I don't know where he parked it. So
it was on Craigslist the minute he shut off the camera. You
know. But here's the thing. Like, let's say that example, and I'm the viewer, and I don't like it. Dockrell, I don't like what you did. I just don't like it. And in fact, and by the way, let's mind you, we're talking about the category of, it could be anything, but we're talking about the category of woodworking, right? I'm so offended by this woodworking video. Let's say. Now, you could be offended by other things, maybe, you know, but let's say I can just do the simple thing, which is take my happy ass down to the next video.
Yeah.
And in fact, if said YouTuber leaves the comment section and I have the freedom to write,
Mhm.
and I choose to write, you're a corporate sellout because you've got the
Yeah.
X5090 for free and this and that. And if I want to put that, what I'm doing is I'm transmitting to the YouTuber a negativity of my own criteria of what he or she should be doing, and that makes me the asshat
Yeah.
because you're not doing anything positive for the person. You're just being a jerk,
Yeah.
and you can't fix jerks.
Well,
You know.
the problem is the world is full of jerks, and it was just one of those things. Now, as I said, this was not a part of that discussion that the other admin and I were having at all.
Okay.
It's just
Right.
where my brain went after we were talking about this other discussion. It just got me thinking about it. I really don't get where people come from, where they get into that mindset, because again, I'm with you and I do understand. You certainly have the right to take something that's offered to you in exchange for promotion or what have you, and you certainly have the right to make any kind of video that falls within the community guidelines.
Yeah.
You also have the right to be a jerk in the comment section. I
Yeah.
just don't get the mentality that feels the need to get in there and say something like that.
You know what it
When they
is?
don't even know the story.
I hate to throw this out, but it's a pseudo philosophical conclusion or non-conclusion. It's a nobody likes commercials.
Nope.
For the most part. However, some people do. Some people, in fact, there's shows that are full of commercials that you go there, like
Oh, yeah.
QVC, that it's one commercial after. In fact, I've spent, back when there was no internet, a lot of time watching QVC just because it was entertaining to see what the next item was going to be. You can't judge. You can judge what you don't like and what you don't from your perspective, but you
Right.
can't assume that your perspective is the perspective that everybody has, because it's not. It never
Right.
will be.
Right.
Your person, and I speak this to everyone. Your perspective is never, no matter how hard you try, going to ever be the perspective of everybody, because everybody has variations of what they get on about and agree with and this and that. So that notion falls short on certain people, that they're not the center of the universe.
Yeah, I think that's the other big portion of it. I think that's the other big portion of it. It's got to be a case of look at me.
Mhm.
And you see that everywhere. I very seldom do how-to videos other than my software tutorials.
Yeah.
And I let everybody know this is not how-to, this is how I do it this way. It's a Windows program. There's 400 ways of doing everything on Windows. But I very seldom do how-to videos, because the minute you open that can of worms, you are going to get beat up in the comments about how wrong you did it. Because it's kind of like making spaghetti. There is no right or wrong way. No two people make it exactly the same.
No. Let me just add this one thing. In the context of what you put out,
Mhm.
because there's a whole laundry list of degrees of extreme, acute frickin' like intense, that
Sure.
example that you're using. But in the context of what you're talking about, within the context of a YouTuber
Mhm.
and everything else, just on the face of kindness, of human decency, and whatever that means, right? Because human decency could mean decency, like what we would
Yeah.
probably unspoken
Well,
understand.
yeah, everybody has their own idea of what decency is.
But for some other people, decency is with a boot freaking smashing someone.
Exactly.
So we have all this, but now within the context of what you're talking about, the interesting thing is that if you're a person that, you just have to be relatively aware.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what is being produced in a video. You know that this person is not like a major corporation studio production. for the most part. Let's use the majority of YouTubers. These people are doing it from their backyard, inside their sheds, and so on. These are people that are putting in loads of amount of effort into creating something that they hope will, people will enjoy for whatever reasons or purposes they have. And these are people that if they have the chance to get a little glimmer of what like the fancy pants people in TV land does, where they actually get paid for a gig or a tool for exchange for something.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing, and here comes this person that can't see the forest from the trees, and they're like just looking at all these things. It's just such a crappy attitude, and they're just putting people down. And those people are people that haven't grown.
Right. I'm with you 100%. And that leads me to my absolute favorite comment I see on YouTube videos, which is, I could do that too if I had $50,000 worth of tools in my shop.
Yeah.
You know what my reply to that is? No, you couldn't. That's it. That's my only reply. No, you couldn't. Because basically put, if you knew anything, if you knew even 1/4 of what you think you knew, you would see that I don't have $50,000 worth of tools in my shop. That if you add up everything, you'd be lucky you're in 4 digits. I don't got a lot of stuff.
Look, I'll give you an example of. So yeah, that's a good one as well. I'll give you an example. So there's this guy called Ben Solo from
Bernie Solo or Ben Solo?
Bernie Solo.
Bernie
Works by Solo.
Uh-huh.
And he's got this channel. It's really cool. You guys should check it out. It's really cool. Really, really cool. He does great editing. The guy was like totally into like marketing, automobiles in Detroit and this and that. Like there's a whole Mad Maker show about it, about his, woodworking life, making life. Well, I was surprised to learn the size of his shop at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He used his abilities camera-wise to create, in my mind, when I'm watching it, that he has this place where there's so many different stations. He used his abilities and strengths to create beautiful content, videos, and projects. And it gave me an illusion of something. That's a skill, There's talented people. I brought him up because all we're doing is using the talents that we have. And if somebody wants to help you along with that talent because they see value that you could bring to them as well, those are associations. It's so darn not even an issue. I don't care. Like, let's say Patrick's Workshop gets a lollipop promotion, and he has to show a lollipop in every video, and many lollipops and swimming in lollipops. I don't care, man. If I don't like it, I'm not going to cut you from your source, man. I'm just going to not watch, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's as easy as that. I don't get people like that. And I've had confrontations with people like that on Facebook. I won't but I've cut them off like that. I say, no, thank you. Not gonna happen here. I don't care. Not gonna happen. I will put my foot down.
I'm with you 100%. I just don't get the mentality. I think it's scarred ego. I don't know if maybe daddy didn't buy him a pony when they were a kid or what.
And we don't know the struggles other people go through. We do not know.
I just know that basically you can sum it all up in just a few words. Just don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk.
I think, but see, some people think that there's probably in their sickness, because I don't know what to call it other than that, in their sickness, in their minds, they're doing the just thing. It just might be. They're thinking, I am correcting wrongs for the world. Again, ego.
Yeah, I could do that if I had 50,000 in tools.
Yeah. Ego, no, you could. Disgusting. It's disgusting ego, and it's okay to have ego because you have to get up in the morning.
Yeah,
you have to have some sort of self.
Yeah, and not only that, let's face it, you and I wouldn't be doing half of what we do if it wasn't for a little bit of ego. This is all a game of dig us.
Yeah. Well, see, it is at the end of the day, if we're realistic, and that's the story with everything from the Beatles, everything you can imagine in history. I mean, Sherlock Holmes was a detective trying to solve, mysteries in books. So that's a bad example. But I was trying for something else. I was trying for Houdini.
Uh-huh.
Come on, is that not a pose or what? He's posing, man. Houdini did great work, but what's he doing? Hey, look at me. I'm a bad mother trucker.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
exactly.
everybody does that, but now there's a humble way to, if you have talents and you want to share them, that's fine.
But you got to remember, it's not bragging if you can really do it.
It isn't bragging if you can really do it. That's true. You're right. Or if you can fake it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's too many fakes out there.
Mm-mm.
But that's a whole nother story. But I got to tell you,
yeah,
just what you just brought up right there with talking about going into ego and then the Beatles and this and that and the other.
Yeah.
Brought my brain into a whole different direction, but it's too late in the day to start it. So I think we need to save it for another podcast.
Yeah, I get indignant with certain things because I feel that bullies, one thing I don't like is bullies. And I don't like manipulators.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like manipulators and bullies, because bullies, I think of, they're manipulators physically, and then there's other types of manipulators. You can have an honest disagreement with someone, but you don't want to overtake them and crush them physically, or you don't want to screw them psychologically.
You are out of touch, man. You are out of touch. It's not enough anymore to be right. You have to completely, absolutely destroy the opponent.
Yeah.
You can't just be right anymore.
It's such a waste of time. And here's the thing. Here's last thing I'll say. This is important, at least to me. See, I'm vibing off of this. At least to me, this is important. I think it's an important point. Noticing the time span of life, doing my ancestry research, and noticing that, hey, wait a second, you know what I realized? All those people that I'm looking up and researching, they're all dead.
Yeah.
They lived, got dragged by horses up to the noose, and whatever else. They lived their lives. And here's the thing. Do you, and I'm speaking to the people out there that believe what you just, the things that we're talking about, are you willing to spend your life judging other people, the short time span you have? I mean, sure, it's fun, I guess, for you. And we all do that to an extent. But you want to ruin people's lives or trying to belittle them in a short time span and flutter out like a moth stuck to a hot lamp, steaming and dropping to the ground where freaking ants eat. I mean, give me a break. So the one clear thing is that we have a short amount of time.
Yep.
And I want to associate with people that I want to associate, and I want to do what the hell I want to do within my power without hurting other people. That's why I do what the hell I want to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
That's it.
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I do what the heck I want to do. And yes, I'll make excuses if I care about people. I'll explain myself. But other than that, beyond the people that I care about, I'm not going to explain myself. I do what the hell I want to do.
Yeah.
So I'll sell, paintbrushes with horse bristles, on my channel if I want to. And if people don't want to watch it, and if they do, they do, and whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's bad business not to cater to people, but whatever.
Yep. Yep. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%.
I'm a savage, actually.
So basically, accept that sponsorship, take that deal if you can use it. And if you're just going to put it on Craigslist tomorrow, let somebody who really needs it get that deal.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We've run an hour and a half on that and spent the last half hour talking about corporate sponsorship. So I think this is the perfect place to say that our website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, is sponsored by Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media.
That is right.
He's your one-stop website shop. If you want a website, if you want just a web store, Maybe you'd like to sell some merch, thinking about making a t-shirt with your logo on it, or some baseball caps, or some cool looking coffee mugs. Steve's your man. Personalized service. He designs and hosts websites for makers and the maker community, but everybody is welcome to contact him. It's harnealmedia.com, HARNEAL. Look down in the description box of this video. You'll find a link.
We also have a Facebook page, and I hope that Mark didn't mention it, and I'm repeating myself because as he was saying all that, my mind, have you ever had when people are in your mind start, because I know where he's going, my mind started drifting, and I was swimming with the words that he was using, but I wasn't. So I don't know if I'm going to repeat what he said. This is screwed up. I should have focused. My mind started, you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, I'm going to tell you, I don't care. I was thinking, he's mentioning Steve. I'm going to get the link and send it over to Steve now. And I've got to close this window. As he started saying, I started drifting into other parts. And then when you said it and you stopped, my brain came back and I was like, oh crap. What part do I say?
You want to know the funny part of that?
What?
You could have probably let that slide.
Yeah.
And nobody would have known it. But you started digging.
Yeah.
And you went, oh no, I'm in a hole. I better dig my way out of it. And just kept going deeper and deeper and threw the shovel away and got on an excavator. Just kept going.
Okay, Your Honor, I did it. I mean, that's kind of like the whole.
Exactly. All right, I did it.
Yeah. Sir, we're not even in trial yet.
I can't stand the pressure. Dude, it's a red light. What's the matter?
With that said, check out our Facebook page because we post stuff on there from the things that we talk about. And so, and come on, why not? Share with us. Tell us what you guys think. There was a lot of stuff talked about over here. If you have subjects that you'd like us to talk about, tell us. We appreciate it, and we'd like to hear because we're curious also where we could go in conversation with your thoughts. So we're totally open with that. And if you didn't mention the website.
I mentioned it peripherally, but we kind of got off on a tangent, and then you started digging. The website is trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Head on over, check us out. Every current episode is on the front page. You'll have to scroll down a little bit, but it's right there. You can't miss it. Eloy does all the artwork, and every artwork cover is on the main page. That's a link. Click on that play button, and there's our podcast right there. We're also available on your favorite podcasting platform. Oh, boy. iTunes, Apple Podcasts. We're on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. So even if you're not listening to us, our voices are coursing through you like a convenience store burrito. TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com. Once again, sponsored by Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook and Trampled Underfoot Podcast right here on the Mighty Mighty YouTubes. We broadcast live in front of a mostly live chat room audience here. 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific on Tuesday evenings. We'll be here. Will you?
See you next time, folks.
Thank you for hanging out with us. Take care, y'all.